AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Hey guys, welcome to the end of the week edition of the Curt Schilling Podcast here on iTunes and Breitbart.com. Got a great show lined up for you today. Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett is going to join me. His new book, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump, might be one of the best reads I've ever had. It is a step-by-step breakdown, and the stuff in there is stuff that the media has not shared with you or tried not to share with you. You're going to be blown away when you hear it and see it. But I'm going to talk to him about that, and then John Nolte is going to join me. John is covering a lot of the real disturbing stories. Why is the fact that our president called Omarosa a dog a much bigger deal than the entire left calling his daughter the C word? We're going to find out why that is, and I think we already know. Anyway, we're going to kick it off with sound bites today. Clearly, one of the big stories out right now is former CIA director and card-carrying member of the Communist Party, John Brennan, had his security clearance revoked. It's a day late and a dollar short, in my opinion. But listen to Mark Levin, who is slowly but surely creeping up the ladder of notoriety in a good way for conservatives. He was on Hannity talking about his reaction to Trump revoking CIA Director Brennan's security clearance. Listen up.
Apparently the fact that Brennan voted for a Stalinist who was funded by the Soviets, the Communist Party USA, was very attractive to Barack Obama, who made him CIA director. Think about that. So how did this man ever get a security clearance? I'm curious about this. Now, a couple of things. The president is looking at Brennan. He revokes his security clearance. Professor Dershowitz needs to know that's a privilege. That's not a right of security privilege. The fact of the matter is nobody's stopping Brennan from speaking. In fact, nobody could stop. He has a big mouth. He will never shut up. He'll go on TV and be the kook that he is. The idea that he has a right to access to information because he served in the Obama administration at the CIA is a preposterous argument, but of course the ACLU will take up the case because they take up a lot of stupid cases. That's number one. Number two, who else is the president looking at? Comey. And people who are keeping score, Comey is a Republican. How many times have the media told us, Mueller's a Republican, Comey's a Republican, and even they questioned the president. Okay, you got a Republican. And by the way, for the media, most of these people the president are looking at are white. I know that's very important to you. Now, Comey was fired at the recommendation of Rosenstein. Comey was a leaker, and he absconded with government documents when he left. His security clearance should be pulled. McCabe is under criminal investigation, the number 2 from the FBI. Never before in history, media, his security clearance should be pulled. Peter Strzok was just fired, the guy in charge of counterintelligence investigations for misconduct. His security should be pulled. James Clapper committed perjury. He lied to the American people and Senator Wyden and that committee long time ago. His security clearance should have been pulled. Bruce Orr, another one, pulled. Yates, another one. Not because the president has a problem with Democrats or liberals. He has a problem with these people. And we haven't even gotten to the unmasking issue yet. So this is not a First Amendment issue.
It's a privilege that all of these people abused and should have had their not just clearance pulled, but these people should be in jail. And then we had Fox News, the Ingram angle on Laura Ingram's show, Rand Paul discussing apparently his conversations with President Trump around John Brennan's security clearance.
I've been calling for a review of the security clearances of a lot of folks, you know, Peter Strzok and others, for months and months and months. I wrote a letter to the FBI director last January asking, does he still have clearance? But with John Brennan, I think what the left is ignoring is that I think he should have had his clearance revoked for cause. You know, he leaked information that came out in the media that we had a double agent in Yemen. Remember when we were going after the underwear bomber? There still is a bomb maker in Yemen. He leaked that to the media, to people, Richard Clark, who had a security clearance, and then he went on television saying, oh, not to worry, we have a double agent in Yemen. The double agent was still there, and he put that agent's life at risk. John Brennan should have been fired for that alone.
And then the spying on the Senate committee, that Dianne Feinstein, like, you guys are looking into my staff's computers. He denies it. They get the results of from the documents. It turns out they were totally spying.
There's also a question of whether he lied to the House Intelligence Committee when he said he did not know who paid for the fake Trump dossier. He said, oh, I didn't know. So there's two possibilities. He's either lying or he's incompetent. Because if he's in charge of the CIA and they're using this fake dossier and no one bothered to ask who paid for it.
Didn't he say he didn't know about it initially?
I think he said he didn't know it was paid for.
Oh, it was like kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, so the head of the CIA doesn't know that this fake dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign. So that's either incompetence or he's lying, one of the two.
Or both. I think it's both. I think it's incompetence and lying on every one of their parts. But again, the fact that the media continues to defend these people should make you sick to your stomach. Anyway, we go from the weird to the just totally absurd. On The Last Word, MSNBC, in his new book, The House of Trump, House of Putin, Craig Unger basically says that Trump has been working for the Soviet Union and Russia, or Russia and the Soviet Union, what was the former Soviet Union, for close to 40 years. Listen to this soundbite.
I think this is really the greatest intelligence operation of our lifetime. And it ended up with a Russian. I think Brennan is absolutely right.
And most successful, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. It installed a Russian asset in the White House without firing a single shot. So I went back to the beginning, and I wanted to see how and why this began. And I ended up going all the way back to 1984, when a Russian met with Trump in Trump Towers. He bought 5 condos and came up with $6 million cash. That's the equivalent of $15 million today. And that was effectively laundering money for the Russian mafia. And if you look at Trump's career, he's done that at least 1,300 times. By that, I mean that he's selling condos to anonymous corporations in all cash purchases. So I believe he's been working with the Russian mafia, laundering their money through his real estate for at least 34 years.
Let me get this straight. You, somebody I've never heard of, believe that Donald Trump has taken money from the Russian mob 1,300 times in amounts of around $6 million, if not more, over 34 years. And the FCC and any of these, the IRS, and nobody has caught him, but you have? Or could it be that if I ask you to provide evidence of those 1,300 incidents and events, you would come up with nothing because you're full of shit? I'm going to guess on the latter, but that's a beautiful one. Literally, he said it. The Russian KGB installed a Russian agent in the White House without firing a shot. That's the angle the left is coming from. That's what they believe. On NBC Nightly News, I want you to listen to them talk about President Trump admitting to revoking Brennan's security clearance because of the Russia investigation. Listen to this.
Mr. President, is it appropriate for you to punish your critics? President Trump not commenting on his new crackdown, but overnight a stunning admission, telling the Wall Street Journal he stripped the security clearance of John Brennan and threatened to revoke others because of the Russia investigation. I call it the rigged witch hunt. It is a sham, and these people led it, so I think it's something that had to be done. Brennan ramped up his own counterattacks in a blistering op-ed in the New York Times, writing, Mr. Trump's claims of no collusion are, in a word, hogwash, after telling MSNBC Wednesday,
we're better than this. We have to be better than this.
Tonight, a show of solidarity from the commander behind the bin Laden raid. Retired Navy Admiral William McRaven writing an open letter to the president in the Washington Post, calling Brennan a man of unparalleled integrity, honesty, and character, and goading the president. I would consider it an honor if you would revoke my security clearance as well. On Capitol Hill, fierce fallout, including from many Republicans.
Look, I thought it was just kind of a banana republic kind of thing, and I don't like it. I think it's inappropriate.
I do not see the grounds for revoking his security clearance.
But some defending the president, including Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, writing in a statement, Brennan should tell Congress about any evidence of collusion. But Burr adding, if Brennan is sharing classified information for political purposes, quote, the president has full authority to revoke his security clearance. And he's not alone.
I actually believe that it was about time that he did take away that, because Brennan has been very outspoken for a guy that was dealing in national security interests as thoroughly as he was.
Now, the president's also been trying to turn the page from the controversy swirling around his former aide Omarosa's new book, which claims the Trump presidency is unraveling. Now, Mr. Trump's campaign is threatening legal action against Omarosa and her publisher, but they're firing back tonight, saying they won't be intimidated or silenced.
The fact that the left is defending Brennan, despite the fact that we know he lied about the FISA warrant and a bunch of other stuff, and the fact that he is someone who was out there possessing some of the most important state secrets in our lives, but he's out there spewing on a daily basis, is enough of a reason in and of itself to revoke his security clearance. But after all of this, those sound bites you just heard, the rhetoric that the left continues to try and make the focal point, we have Larry Kudlow talking about the stuff that really matters. Listen up.
I mean, we got 3.1% GDP in the first half of the year, 4.1 in the second quarter. The Atlanta Fed is predicting 4.3 in the third quarter. I think it's a very realistic estimate. Here's a point. Anybody who does political forecasting using the economy always focuses on a number, hang with me, real disposable income. Just think of it as after-tax pay, take-home pay, Ronald Reagan used to say. So that measure is growing at 3.1% last 12 months. When we came to office, it was less than 1% on a 12-month basis. It has jumped. So people say only a few are benefiting. Not true. This is a measure of the entire economy. Everyone's wages and salaries, adjusted for taxes and adjusted for inflation, is growing at 3%. It's a tremendous number. And there's no signs that it's abating. Confidence numbers, large businesses, small businesses, and consumer confidence numbers are at or near record highs, and from the latest surveys are continuing to rise. There's no let-up in the increase, and confidence is everything. Confidence is everything. And I can run down a litany. I'm not going to take up your time. I'm just saying the really wonderful part of the story for me, I get off on this stuff. I understand that, but it's very important for the country, Americans, workforce. The new numbers coming in, retail sales, industrial production, low inflation, a rock-steady dollar, trillions of dollars of capital from all over the world is coming into the United States because our economy, our investors, our workforce are crushing it right now.
The left would have you believe the world's coming to an end, right? I mean, that this is one of the foremost economic experts on the planet basically telling you that every single thing that's happening to our economy is good for everybody, top to bottom. And our quote-unquote racist president, who has made the minority unemployment rate plummet, Nancy Pelosi talking about crumbs, yet Larry Kudlow's telling you that every single family, bottom to top, is benefiting from this incredible economic boom. No matter what the left says, the facts are still going to screw them up. We got a great show today, guys. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett, his new book, The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump, is something that will become a must-read. One of the better books that I've read in the last 2 or 3 years. on all of the corruption we're dealing with. We'll take a break, back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow. Jeannie in Pennsylvania.
I think we've gotten away from what we really hired him to do, which is draining the swamp. If you look at the real picture of draining a swamp, you go in and you take all the water out of it. What does it leave? It leaves the gunk. He cannot get rid of the gunk. We have to get rid of the gunk. Everything he's doing, he's lowering the water so we can see who needs to go. The only way they can go is if we vote them out.
Breitbart News Daily. Weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now is the author of a new book called The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. He's Fox News legal analyst who's been busy as heck. Gregg Jarrett. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Curt, my pleasure being with you. I'm well, thanks.
Well, first off, I got to tell you, like a lot of the books that I'm reading these days about these last 2 years, I read your book last night. Fascinating read. Well done, by the way.
Thank you.
And I got angry the more and more I read because I don't understand what. So it's one thing to hear everybody gets to play by different rules and this and that, but when you see in print, 18 USC statute, blah, 18 USC, when you see all these violations and there is still no recourse, there is still no penalty for these, and these aren't small, these aren't, I always say, these aren't mistakes. Mistakes is me calling you Jeff when your name is Greg. That's a mistake. These are felonies. Why hasn't anyone in the Trump administration taken action against any of these people?
Well, that's one of the frustrating parts about writing this book. I identify how the law enforcers became the law breakers, and yet Jeff Sessions, as Attorney General, who really does have power to impanel a grand jury to present this kind of evidence, has failed to do so. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but I think he is probably one of the most feckless attorney generals in modern American history. He's AG in name only, and the guy in charge is Rod Rosenstein, who should have disqualified himself, by the way, at the outset of the Trump-Russia investigation, because he's a key witness and a prosecutor all rolled into one. And he also appears to be covering up his own wrongdoing in signing off on the wiretap warrant application. So there appear to be still people at the top of the Department of Justice who are either covering up or too incompetent to do what the law really demands they do.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you. When I look at a guy like, and I couldn't agree with you more on Jeff Sessions, and I got to tell you, I'm incredibly disappointed. I thought that was going to be one of the better appointments, one of the, especially looking back on what's gone on. But Rod Rosenstein, I don't think he should have recused himself. I think he should have been recused by someone else. And I mean, what he did with these FISA warrants, again, these aren't mistakes. These are intentional acts to cover up. And we know, based on evidence that's come out in the last 18 months, that the collusion, the collaboration, the whatever word you want to use, was done by all the people doing the investigating, not the people they were investigating actually themselves.
That's correct. I mean, there were a group of people, top officials, I name them in the book, led by James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They knew that Hillary Clinton, for example, violated multiple felonies, but Comey was determined to clear her notwithstanding. So Strzok and Page sit down at Strzok's computer and they sanitized Comey's findings of fact. They twist those facts, contort the law to clear her. And at the same time, that very moment, as Comey is standing in front of television cameras absolving Clinton, his FBI is secretly meeting in a building with London with the author of the fictitious anti-Trump dossier that's funded by Clinton and the Democrats. And that was the beginning of the Russian hoax. The dossier, as fabricated as it was the pretext for this dilating investigation of Trump in order to first stop him from getting elected, and when he won, to undo the election results and remove him from office.
one of the reasons why I think your book is going to have such an impact is it basically lays this out for the layman in ways that are very easy to understand, that there are no flukes here. None of this is a one-off. This was a concerted effort by a group of probably the most powerful people in this country, if not the world, to absolve a woman who knew exactly what she was doing at every step of the way, who knew she was committing felonies and who was doing it intentionally. And I keep going back to one powerful thing that I realized right after the election. All of this was done because all of the people involved expected Hillary Clinton to be our president.
That's right. You know, and Trump was a threat. He vowed to drain the swamp. Well, these people were the swamp. They didn't want to be drained. And so they acted in concert to subvert the rule of law and undermine the democratic process. Comey actually wrote down that Hillary Clinton committed crimes. He wrote it down not once but twice, that she was grossly negligent. That's right out of the felony statute. Then he told his staff that he wanted to clear her anyway, which is why they had to alter the language and expunge the incriminating words. That's obstruction of justice by Comey and Strzok and Page, to ignore compelling evidence for what appears to be purely political reasons because they wanted to perpetuate their positions of power, and Trump was a threat.
I got to ask you, as someone who's kind of been on the leading edge of this, kind of at the tip of the spear the whole way, I know it's a broad question with a huge answer, but I'm curious to know, where would we be right now today if she had won? I can't. I mean, and I ask that because all of the things that we've learned about the FBI, none of that would have come out. We would have found out. I mean, where would this country be?
Well, all of the crimes, I believe, were committed by what is essentially a group of 10 individuals. It would have all been buried and covered up, and they were counting on that. How else do you explain the reckless text messages between Strzok and Page? They never thought they'd be found out, but those messages really, Curt, provide a powerful narrative of how severe bias against Trump and in favor of Hillary Clinton motivated these top officials to break the law, to clear Clinton, and to frame Trump in an effort to stop him from becoming president.
And I've watched it. It's amazing to me the amount of chaff that they have put out there in the last 6 to 8 weeks, well, 16 to 18 months, but the last 6 to 8 weeks especially, as the narrative changes day in and day out, there becomes a new end-of-the-world crisis. I mean, I played a soundbite earlier. You had Craig Unger alleging that Trump has been a made member of the Russian mob for 34 years, and that the Russian government got him in the White House without firing a shot. I mean, they really honestly – I don't know if they believe that, but they're expecting us to believe that, which to me is every bit as insulting as anything else that they're saying and doing right now.
Well, you're right, Curt. In fact, you see it in the fictitious dossier, which was based on anonymous Russian sources that likely never existed. It was triple and quadruple hearsay. Now, I mean, that's not even evidence. If you tried to present that in a court of law, you'd be thrown in the hoosegow, and yet they did present that in a court of law and concealed vital information and deceived the FISA court judges in order to wiretap the Trump campaign. So many crimes were committed here, you really would need a calculator to keep track of them all. Abuse of power, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to defraud the government, the list, perjury, the list goes on. And it's a sad commentary on how power corrupts and the arrogance of these individuals, many of whom have either been fired or they resigned because they knew they were going to go down.
All the while claiming they did nothing wrong. They were fired, and they've been fired, and they resigned after claiming they were falsely accused of all these things. And you mentioned something that's very powerful. All of those crimes were committed by all of these people. This isn't somebody committing one. They all committed the same number of crimes in many instances. But here's the other piece that I'm very, very curious about. when you go back, I was blown away when this all became public. But the fact of the matter is, the DNC and the Clinton the Clinton campaign, they actually bought the Democratic primary from Bernie Sanders, and he allowed that to happen. Whether they allowed that to happen or not, how is that something that was allowed to go pretty much unchecked? And once it was found out, it was kind of one of those, yeah, but there's more important stuff to do. I don't understand. We're a democracy. We're supposed to be, built and funded by the voters. And that feels to me like exactly the opposite. That feels like something that would happen in Russia.
Oh, absolutely. And it appears to me that Hillary Clinton and her campaign violated Federal Campaign Election Act laws. They didn't give a proper accounting for what it was they were doing. It's very similar to sort of money laundering, the scheme that she used to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders. Donna Brazile, the head of the Democratic National Committee, is the one who blew the whistle and exposed it. And yet, where's the investigation of Hillary Clinton? Where was the investigation of Clinton, as I identify in Chapter 4, Clinton greed and Uranium One? That was nicely and quietly put to bed by the Obama Department of Justice. So, this was really a cesspool of corruption at both the Department of Justice and the FBI.
That's something, Greg, you're a lawyer, and you're a legal expert. I'm very comfortable in saying that as I listen to you and I've read your work now. But things like Uranium One and the Awan brothers scandal with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a lot of other things. How do you go through writing this book, finding all this stuff out, and not, first of all, have your head explode, number one, but look at all of the potential lawyers involved in this and wonder how they still have jobs? These people are, again, these aren't mistakes. These aren't, being late to an appointment is a mistake. Calling somebody the wrong name is a mistake. These are outwardly intentional felonies committed by people in the most powerful positions in our country.
That's right. But Hillary Clinton had so many allies at the Department of Justice, including Loretta Lynch, and people at the White House who wanted her to be essentially a third term of Barack Obama, that they protected her. The reason I wrote that chapter, Clinton Greed, is it explains why she maintained a private server for all of her State Department business, including 110 documents that were classified sent or received, which would be 110 felonies, by the way, because she didn't want people to know that she had the equivalent of a for sale sign on the door of her office at the Department of State. And so, when people were saying, well, why would she do such a thing if she really was trying to hide corrupt activities? I identify those corrupt activities and her motivation.
Right, 4 years. This was not a one-off. For 4 years she did this, and there's no doubt in my mind everybody had to know that was involved in exchanging emails with her, that the server that she was maintaining and all the things she was doing. There's the fact that those people got up in front of cameras and have lied to our faces for 2 years, and she's been doing it her whole life, is again offensive to me. They think we're that stupid, and that is. And I got to tell you, each chapter of your book that I got into, like I said, I got a little bit more angry because every chapter brings more people into the complicitness of this, of all of these things. There's no, and what you said earlier, her web of protectors is so big, in my mind, that's the only reason she hasn't fallen yet, because she has so many people on her quote-unquote payroll that when it's the proverbial house of cards, it literally. If one falls, this whole thing goes down, and I'm not sure that the public is ready for what that actually means.
And one of Hillary's biggest protectors, of course, was Barack Obama. He claimed he didn't know she had a private server. He was communicating, as I explain in the book, with her on that private server, but using a pseudonym. And I'll give you another example of how he protected her. Just when it looked like there was so much compelling evidence of her criminality, he goes on television, Fox News Sunday, and he basically tells the nation, but it was a direct message to the Department of Justice and the FBI, that he didn't want her to be prosecuted. He called her actions merely careless as opposed to grossly negligent. And he also said she didn't intend to violate the law. So Barack Obama didn't need to pull James Comey or Loretta Lynch into the Oval Office and say, don't prosecute Hillary Clinton. He did it publicly, which was really quite astonishing.
Is that not one of the things that just blew you away, was their brazen and carefree nature in a lot of these things? The Clinton-Lynch meeting on the tarmac. I mean, we all know exactly what that was about and why that was about, and we've been lied to since it happened. But again, this goes back to the fact that these people never imagined in a million years that she wouldn't be in the White House at this point. And I can't even imagine, when you think about what's happened in North Korea, when you think about what's happened with our economy and unemployment and all of the incredible progress we've made over 18 months, not only would that not be happening, but where we would be from a power perspective, because this would have only gotten worse. James Comey and these people would have only gotten more powerful, and the web would have only. I can't. And the other thing, Greg, is I recognize the things that you're doing. You're not doing for free. There's a cost to this. I've learned it. I think anybody speaking out conservatively has learned it, and I'm not complaining about it. It's just the price you pay for standing up for things you believe in. But this book is, guys. Again, I'm speaking with Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett. His book, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump, probably the best book I've read to date in explaining just exactly, step by step, how bad this is, how bad it should have been, and how much has gone unchecked. Greg, listen, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it. I would love to have you back.
Curt, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm a huge admirer of yours, and you're doing great work. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Gregg Jarrett, guys. God bless you. You take care. We'll be back in just a minute, guys.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
A lot of people not knowing what action they could or should take to make the difference. What I do is try to turn people on to sites like Breitbart, people who are writing and publishing the truth so that people will get educated. But, you kind of can't blame productive members of society who are kind of confused, perplexed as to what do we do to take this government back.
Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125. We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now, as he does hopefully once a week, is one of the guys at Breitbart who is working his butt off and having to cover some of the most disturbing stories in our lifetime, but he is doing it with class and style in ways that you guys go to Breitbart.com and Google, or in the search engine, put John Nolte's name in. Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Curt. Thanks for having me on.
I'm going to start off by firing an easy question at you. Excuse me. Donald Trump called Omarosa a dog. And on, I think, 9 or 10 different occasions, he's called men dogs as well. He was calling her dog because that's what she is. It has nothing to do with her race or color or any of that other crap. However, when the left called Ivanka or Trump's daughter the C word, that apparently was more than okay. And in some cases, they said it was preferred. And I'm wondering if there isn't a double standard and hypocrisy like we've never seen before. Is it not right there in the word dog and the C word being comparable?
What we have in the media now is an institution that is driven only by its hate. I mean, they need to feed their hate. And we're seeing that now bleed over into the coverage where they're so hateful, they're so angry. The media are unafraid to look ridiculously hypocritical. They're no longer even trying to cover their double standards because their need to spew hate overrides everything else. I mean, we have seen now 555 acts of violence against Trump supporters. We have seen people who are part of the media, Jake Tapper's pal in late night calling Ivanka Trump the C word, legendary Hollywood figures calling Sarah Sanders the C word and Kirsten Nielsen the C word. And the media just doesn't care. But Trump uses the word dog, which is just part of his vernacular and has been for decades. And they have to hate him, so they use that to just express this hatred, and they just look ridiculous.
I can say, with all honesty, it's not becoming of him to use that word dog as a president. I mean, it's just it's beneath the office. I understand why he did it, and I understand that's part of who he is. But the fact of the matter is that those two aren't even on the same playing field. And it's dawned on me over the last couple of days, a very simple thing that you've heard a million times in your life is now the truism for our media. They are quite literally blinded by their hate. That's the only explanation that you can come up with for them to have this double standard. I mean, my God, look at the James Gunn situation. You had people sticking up for someone who, and I'm going to be very clear about this, those aren't pedophilia jokes. Those are someone who finds pedophilia funny. That's not a joke. None of that's a joke. But the fact that Hollywood and all these people were recalling or wanting Disney to recall it or redo the decision and bring James Gunn back speaks volumes to me about who and what these people are.
Part of it, and the worst part of it, was that the entertainment media was covering up James Gunn's connection to this man convicted of possessing child pornography. And it wasn't guilt by association. Nobody's going to attack someone because they didn't know their friend was a child molester or possessed child pornography. He got a video from this guy, and James Gunn got a video from this guy who would later be convicted of child pornography, and spread it around as pubescent girls touched themselves and wrote a vile comment about it. He attended a pedophilia-themed costume party.
You and I both know we're men. We have kids, and I'm not talking about anything macho, but the fact of the matter is, a pedophilia-themed party is in no way normal. That's not something that normal people go to. That's not something as a man I would ever be found at, and any man I know would ever be found at. It's not something you joke about, and the costumes were as repulsive as the idea.
Yeah, and imagine if he had gone to a Cinco de Mayo party and had been photographed in a sombrero, with a handlebar mustache, right, and bullets crossing. Or gone to a costume party with a blackface. That would be. Yeah, but even something as anodyne as a sombrero. I mean, he'd be vilified, and yet these photographs come out on Friday night, and the entertainment media and the establishment media completely cover them up. A pedophilia-themed party. That is, there's so many things going on in Hollywood, and unfortunately in the Catholic Church, that are beyond. I'm 52 years old. I've had cable TV my whole life. This stuff I had never even imagined people would do things like this. Attend a pedophilia themed party. What is going on with people?
Right. Well, and that's one of those you can't even kind of make. You wouldn't even make that up in a dark place.
No, that's right.
And it leads me to, and here's the next thing I got to ask you. Your latest article is cuts me to my core. As a Christian, I can understand, and I know it's not not the main reason, but I can understand why young people are moving away from the church. The fact is, I don't question for a second that this goes all the way to the Vatican, but we've recently learned that there were over 300. Let me just let that number sink in. 300 Catholic priests who abused north of 1,000 children, who ruined north of 1,000 lives, and they were protected by their local parishes and by their local bishops and by the Vatican. The Vatican appears to me to be the biggest crime syndicate on the planet. I don't know any other way to put that.
Yeah, listen, I joined the church in 2008 as an adult because I thought this was behind us. I love the church. I was proud to be a Roman Catholic. I'm currently reading this report, this 800-page report released by a grand jury in Pennsylvania. And this stuff, the sex part of it, the rape of these children is so hideous it would make Harvey Weinstein blush. But the cover-up, and the important thing for everyone to know is that most of this information is coming from what the diocese, there's 5 dioceses in Pennsylvania involved, what they themselves called the quote-unquote secret archives. This isn't coming from witnesses. This isn't coming even from the priests who came forward to confess what they had done. This is archives, secret archives, their word, not ours, that for decades detailed the abuse and the cover-up. And this cover-up was not only the stuff of gangsterism. The cover-up was callous. It was like they were keeping score. They would celebrate someone who they knew was abused, losing in court. You read this report, you read the reaction of these monsters and how they completely dismissed and even mocked and just saw this only as a scorecard. Can we beat these people? Can we beat these people? It's the stuff of gangsters. But the difference between the mafia and the church is that the mafia doesn't have as many victims as the church. And this to me is going to be unbelievably damaging to the church because they fooled us once. They told us in 2002, 2003, this was done. And it's not done. And when the Vatican releases a statement, as they did yesterday, after 2 days of silence, even though they knew this report was coming out, when they release a statement bragging that almost no children were raped after 2002, I mean, that's their standard, almost no. Right. And I'm not beating up the church. I love the church. I'm a member of the church. But imagine if Ford Motors said almost no Pintos blew up after 2002. Right. Or a mosque said almost none of our imams radicalized terrorists after 2002. The church's passiveness that we are seeing from them right now is in its own way an act of evil, because they have monsters in their house and they are just sitting passively back and going, well, you need to report this and you need to cooperate with authorities. And that is not good enough. It's not even close to good enough.
The one example that is going to stick in my mind for the rest of my life was the discussion around the rape of an 18-month-old girl. And again, we're not talking about a 3-time felon, illegal immigrant, or a deranged person that is broken out of a psychotic ward. We're talking about a Catholic priest raping an 18-month-old girl, and I don't understand how. Well, I mean, as a Christian, it's very hard for me to have this. I have very much a vengeance and a revenge mentality for stuff like this. I think a public hanging is too good for these people. They're going to burn in hell for their eternity, which is, I guess, needs to be enough for me, but it isn't, because the lives that they've destroyed are amongst us. When you see these people, these kids who there are, in many cases, you're talking about homeless and abused children who were brought into the church as sort of a savior, and that savior turned out to be the biggest monster in their lives. I don't know how we don't prosecute beyond the fullest extent of the law. And here's the thing. Why is this allowed to happen inside the church without legal repercussion? Why can't law enforcement, or why aren't they stepping in and pulling these people out of the parish and putting them in jail?
Well, and that is part of the horrific nature of this, is that the goal of the church was to get through the statute of limitations, was to run out the clock, to stall and to cover up and to lie and to legalize this, to use legal warfare against these victims in order to run out the clock, the statute of limitations clock. And this cannot be fixed within the church. The church is now beyond redemption. It cannot be fixed. The only thing that's going to fix this. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, after reading it, this feels very much like, to me, like what we're dealing with the Clinton stuff, the FBI wanting to investigate itself. There's no chance that you gut this thing and fix it by allowing them to handle how it gets gutted and how it gets fixed. So you have to have an independent party step in here and clean house.
Every month for years, my wife and I have been contributing to the Archdiocese of Charlotte. That ends today. I'm going to contact the bank today, and that direct deposit is done. The only way this stops is if those of us who love the church enough to leave the church and tell these people no more until you turn over all your secret archives in every diocese in the world, not just America, but in the world, to the authorities. Because I cannot in good conscience fund what this church is right now. I love Christ. I love what the church is about, but they will never get another penny from me until there is a full and complete enema. And the sad thing is this, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
No.
Because not enough people are going to leave and the church is never going to change.
It's too much money. You're talking people. I don't think people understand when you talk about the Vatican. You're talking about tens of billions of dollars in wealth, and much like the Clinton House of Cards, you're talking about a worldwide entity. The Vatican, the influence the Vatican has over the tens of millions of Catholics in this world, is so much bigger and more dangerous and deadly and horrific than the mafia in any possible way. It's just it's embarrassing. Listen, John, I got to go. I really appreciate this. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the stuff that you've been doing this past 18 months, but especially in the last couple of weeks, because I know these stories are incredibly disturbing. But we have to keep finding out about it. You have to keep doing this, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Have a good weekend.
Thanks again to Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett. His new book, The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump. For anybody that has been with me and understands that my reading recommendations as being big, I can't implore you enough to read this book. It is absolutely gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, and terrifying at the level of discord and corruption at the highest levels. But and to John Nolte, who's continuing to expose so much in ways and stories you don't want to hear about. But anyway, my winner today, Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry is my winner today. And here's the reason why. He and the State Bond Commission denied $600 million to Citibank and the Bank of America over their stance on gun control adopted by both companies. Citibank and Bank of America were both part of a road financing plan in the state, but were omitted from the financial plan after arbitrarily placing new gun controls on banking customers. So basically, they took a stance on the Second Amendment, and it cost them $600 million each, which I can't think of a better way to hit them in the pocketbook. And my loser today, London Mayor Sadiq Khan continues to be a loser. I don't know if you guys heard about this story, but there was a teenager who was literally disemboweled in the streets of London. And an incident in the Elmington estate in Camberwell. Witnesses saw 4 or 5 black boys running. Then all of a sudden you heard, help, help. And they found a young, one of 4 stab victims who basically was laying there with his intestines, quote, intestines falling out on the ground. Sadiq Khan has turned London into kind of a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome sort of a place, and not in a good way. And people are being murdered because of his incredibly stupid and ignorant laws, and the citizens are paying for that. And hopefully they will never again pay for that when they can get him out. Anyway, those are the winners and losers. God bless you. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you. This was a really good week. I'm very excited about where the show has gone and where it's going. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. God bless, and we'll catch up with you guys on Monday.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.